The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a sound that echoed through the vast hall like thunder. Ambassador Jake Morrison walked slowly down the long aisle between rows of alien delegates, his footsteps the only human sound, in a room filled with creatures who had already decided his people's fate. The air felt thick and heavy, not just from the different atmospheric mixtures that each species needed, but from the weight of what was about to happen. Jake had been Earth's voice in the galaxy for 12 years. He had negotiated trade deals, prevented wars, and built relationships that he thought would last forever. Now he stood before beings who had once called him friend, and he could see nothing but cold judgment in their strange eyes. The Zephyrian Prime Minister Zektar sat on the highest platform, his blue-scaled face showing no emotion. The crystalline ambassador's body sparkled with internal light as she communicated silently with others of her kind through frequencies humans could not hear. Captain Lisa Hayes watched from the observation deck above, her uniform crisp despite the long journey from Earth. Her ship, the New York, was one of 50 human vessels waiting in orbit around Nexus Prime. She had hoped they would be escorting Jake home with good news. Instead, she feared they would be the last human ships to ever leave this place freely. Through her earpiece, she could hear the nervous chatter of her crew as they monitored alien fleet movements around the station. Dr. Alan Brooks sat in the lower viewing area with other human scientists and diplomats who had come to witness what many hoped would be humanity's full acceptance into galactic society. Instead, they were about to watch their species be cast out into darkness. Alan's hands trembled slightly as he held his tablet, recording everything for what might be the last official human presence in galactic politics. His mind raced through calculations and theories, trying to understand how things had gone so wrong so quickly. Zektar stood and the chamber fell silent. His voice carried easily through the hall without amplification, a natural ability of his species that had helped make them natural leaders. The Galactic Council has reached its decision regarding the human question. After extensive deliberation and review of recent events, we find that humanity poses an unacceptable risk to galactic stability and peace. Jake felt his heart sink, but kept his face neutral. Behind him, he could hear sharp intakes of breath from the human delegation. They had known this was possible, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way that preparation could not soften. He thought of the billions of people back on Earth who were going about their daily lives, unaware that their future among the stars was being decided in this moment. The crystalline ambassador's voice chimed like bells as she spoke. Humanity's recent conflicts with the Mantid Collective and their aggressive expansion into contested territories demonstrate a pattern of behavior inconsistent with galactic citizenship. Their military actions, while successful, showed a level of tactical brutality that concerns all peaceful species. Jake wanted to argue that humanity had only defended themselves and their colonies from Mantid attacks, but he knew the decision was already made. The trial had been a formality. The real discussions had happened in private chambers where humans were not welcome. He glanced up at Lisa and saw her face was stone still, but her eyes burned with barely controlled anger. Commander Kate Sullivan stood in the communication center of Earth's primary intelligence facility, watching the proceedings through encrypted channels. Her team had been monitoring alien communications for months, and she had seen this outcome approaching like a storm on the horizon. Unlike the diplomats and military officers who still hoped for a peaceful solution, Kate had been preparing for war. Not the kind of war that humans had fought before, but something entirely different. Zektar continued speaking, his words carrying across the galaxy through thousands of communication networks. Effective immediately, all human colonies beyond the Sol system will be placed under protective custody of appropriate council species. All human vessels will return to Earth immediately. A containment barrier will be established around the IET or Sol system to prevent further human expansion until such time as humanity demonstrates its readiness for galactic citizenship. The words hit Jake like physical blows. Protective custody meant invasion and occupation. The barrier meant prison. He thought of the mining colonies around Proxima Centauri where families had lived for generations. He thought of the research stations studying ancient alien ruins and the trading posts that connected dozens of worlds. All of it would be gone, taken from humanity, and given to others who would claim they were keeping it safe. Lisa Hayes received the order to withdraw through her command circuit, but she also received something else, a coded message from Kate Sullivan that simply said, "Lazarus Protocol authorized." Lisa had hoped she would never see those words, but she had trained for this moment. She began issuing quiet orders to her fleet, preparing them for what would look like a retreat, but was actually the beginning of something much larger. Dr. Alan Brooks was already working on a different problem as he watched the council chambers through his tablet screen. The containment barrier they were describing would need massive amounts of energy and sophisticated monitoring systems. That meant it would have weaknesses, gaps, and most importantly, it would tell humanity exactly what kind of technology their former allies possessed. Every prison was also a school for those smart enough to study the walls. Jake Morrison stood silent as the council finished reading their judgment. When they asked if he had any final words, he looked directly at Zektar and spoke in a clear, calm voice. "History will remember this day, but perhaps not in the way you expect." Then he turned and walked out of the chamber, followed by every other human in the building. As the human ships began their long journey back to Sol, Kate Sullivan activated communication networks that officially did not exist across the galaxy and trading posts and mining colonies on alien worlds and space stations. Humans who had lived quiet lives as shopkeepers and mechanics and teachers received messages that changed everything. The galaxy thought it was sending humanity home in defeat. What it was actually doing was scattering the seeds of its own transformation across every star system in known space. The exile had begun, but so had something else. Something that would grow in darkness and silence until the day it emerged to change everything. The galaxy thought it knew about the small, aggressive species from the third planet around an unremarkable yellow star. 8 years had passed since the Great Exile, and the galaxy had moved on from thinking about humanity. Trade routes that once included human colonies now bypassed the Sol system entirely. The Zephyrian Empire had expanded into former human territory, and the Crystalline Collective had claimed the advanced research stations that humans had built around distant stars. To most alien species, humanity had become a footnote in galactic history, a cautionary tale about the dangers of aggressive expansion. But in the darkness beyond Neptune's orbit, Colonel Ryan Davis stood in the observation deck of humanity's greatest secret. The facility had no official name, though the workers called it simply the Yard. From his position, Ryan could see the skeletal frameworks of 12 massive ships taking shape in the zero-gravity construction bays. Each vessel was larger than anything humanity had built before the exile, and they incorporated technology that no alien species had ever imagined. The work never stopped. 3 shifts of workers labored around the clock, using materials harvested from asteroids that officially did not exist. The mining operations were hidden throughout the outer solar system, camouflaged to look like natural ice formations or debris fields. To the alien monitoring stations watching Sol system, humanity appeared to be slowly adapting to life confined within their home system. They saw increased mining activity in the asteroid belt and expanded settlements on Mars and the outer moons. What they did not see was happening in the cold darkness where no one thought to look. Dr. Elena Martinez had not slept more than 4 hours in any single night for the past 3 years. Her laboratory deep inside Ceres held technologies that represented the combined genius of humanity's greatest minds, working without the limitations that had once constrained them. On her workbench lay components that had been salvaged from destroyed alien ships, pieces of technology that the Galactic Council had assumed were lost forever. Elena and her team had not just rebuilt these devices, they had improved them in ways their original creators never could have conceived. The breakthrough had come 18 months ago when Elena realized that alien technology was designed by species that thought in rigid hierarchical patterns. The Zephyrians built systems that followed strict logical progressions, while the Crystallines created networks that mirrored their hive mind communication structures. Humans, with their chaotic and creative thinking, could see possibilities that escaped other species entirely. They could take orderly alien technology and introduce elements of controlled randomness that made it exponentially more powerful. General Paul Carter commanded what did not officially exist. The Shadow Fleet consisted of 47 ships that used stealth technology so advanced they were invisible not just to sensors, but to most forms of detection that alien science could conceive. These vessels patrolled the void between star systems, establishing supply caches and monitoring posts in regions of space that other species considered empty and worthless. Paul had been a career military officer before the exile, but the past 8 years had transformed him into something the galaxy had never seen before, a human admiral commanding forces across interstellar distances while remaining completely hidden from enemy detection. His ships could travel from the outer reaches of the Sol system to the edge of Zephyrian space in less time than it took alien vessels to cross a single star system, using jump drives that left no detectable signatures. The first test of their new capabilities had come 6 months ago when Captain Steve Rogers led a small task force to the Kepler system. The mission was simple reconnaissance, but it proved that humanity could operate freely throughout the galaxy without detection. Steve's ship, the Ghost, had spent 3 weeks gathering intelligence on Zephyrian military installations, recording everything from patrol schedules to communication frequencies. The aliens never knew they had been watched. Steve had volunteered for the mission because he understood what many of his fellow humans still struggled to accept. The exile had not been humanity's punishment, it had been their opportunity. For the first time in their spacefaring history, humans could develop technology and strategy without alien oversight or interference. They could be as creative and aggressive as their nature demanded, without diplomatic consequences or political constraints. Back on Earth, Kate Sullivan coordinated the most complex intelligence operation in human history from a bunker that did not appear on any official maps. Her network of sleeper agents across the galaxy had been activated in stages, each one believing they were part of a smaller local resistance movement. In reality, they formed the foundation of an intelligence network that reached into every major alien civilization. Mary Thompson sold trinkets and supplies to travelers on the trade station orbiting Kepler 442b. To her customers, she was just another human refugee who had managed to find work in the outer territories before the exile. They did not know that her small shop contained communication equipment capable of transmitting encrypted messages across half the galaxy, or that she had been recording every conversation and transaction for the past 4 years. On the crystalline homeworld, Bob Johnson worked maintenance on the atmospheric processing systems that kept the planet habitable for visiting alien dignitaries. His work gave him access to secure areas and communication networks, and his position was so mundane that no one ever questioned his presence or activities. Bob had been sending detailed intelligence reports about crystalline military capabilities and political discussions for 3 years without anyone suspecting his true purpose. Dr. Nathan Price had solved the problem that had plagued human expansion since they first developed faster-than-light travel. Traditional jump drives created detectable distortions in spacetime that could be tracked across vast distances. Nathan's Phantom Drive folded space in a way that left no signature, allowing human ships to travel anywhere in the galaxy without leaving evidence of their passage. The first successful test had been conducted just 2 weeks ago, when a small courier ship traveled from Mars to the edge of Zephyrian space and back in less than 6 hours. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Roberts led the first active military operations outside the Sol system since the exile. Her special forces teams were small, highly trained, and equipped with technology that made them nearly invisible to alien detection systems. Amy's first mission had been to rescue a group of human scientists who had been imprisoned on a Zephyrian research station. The operation had been completed without any alien authorities ever knowing that humans had been involved. The rescued scientists brought with them intelligence about alien research projects and military developments that proved invaluable to humanity's growing knowledge base. More importantly, they brought confirmation that the galaxy's major powers were becoming complacent and overconfident. The Zephyrians had reduced their military spending, believing that the only species capable of challenging them had been neutralized. The crystallines had focused their attention on internal political struggles, assuming that external threats were no longer a concern. As Ryan Davis watched another massive ship take shape in the construction bay, he thought about the irony of their situation. The aliens had exiled humanity to prevent them from becoming a threat to galactic stability. Instead, they had given humans the privacy and motivation they needed to become something far more dangerous than they had ever been before. The species, that had been judged too aggressive and unpredictable for galactic citizenship, was quietly building the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen. In less than 2 years, the first phase of their preparation would be complete. Humanity would possess the ships, technology, and intelligence network necessary to operate freely throughout the galaxy. But more importantly, they would have something their enemies lacked: the element of complete surprise and the motivation that came from years of careful preparation and burning desire for justice. The Zephyrian mining facility on Kepler 296c operated around the clock, extracting rare minerals from the planet's core for use in their most advanced starship drives. The facility was considered so secure and remote that it was defended by only a small patrol fleet and automated defense systems. The Zephyrian administrators never imagined that anyone would be bold enough to attack such a distant target, and they certainly never suspected that the species they had exiled 15 years ago was capable of reaching them. Admiral Helen Foster watched the target through her command display from a distance of 3 light years, her ships invisible to every form of detection the Zephyrians possessed. The Shadow Fleet had grown to over 200 vessels, each one equipped with technology that surpassed anything in the galactic arsenal. Helen had been chosen to lead the first active military operation outside the Sol system because of her ability to think like a pirate while maintaining the discipline of a military commander. The attack began without warning and ended before the defenders could send a distress signal. Helen's ships emerged from Phantom Drive directly inside the facility's defensive perimeter, overwhelming the automated systems with electronic warfare that turned their own weapons against them. The few Zephyrian ships that managed to launch were disabled rather than destroyed, their crews taken prisoner before they could report what they had seen. To outside observers, the facility had been attacked by unknown pirates using advanced technology. The stolen materials and damaged equipment suggested raiders who were well organized and extremely well equipped, but there was no evidence pointing to any specific group or species. The Zephyrian investigation would eventually conclude that a new pirate organization had emerged in the outer territories, possibly using stolen technology from multiple species. Agent Sam Miller had been posing as a freelance trader for 3 years, moving cargo between systems and building relationships with merchants and officials throughout the galactic frontier. His ship, the Wanderer, was unremarkable in every way except for the highly advanced scanning and communication systems hidden in its cargo holds. Sam had been mapping potential colony sites and establishing supply networks in regions of space that other species considered worthless. The world that humans would call New Haven orbited a star that was not even named in most galactic databases. The planet was technically habitable, but required significant terraforming to support large populations. Previous surveys had dismissed it as too expensive to develop, which made it perfect for humanity's purposes. Sam had been quietly preparing the world for colonization for over a year, using automated systems that worked slowly enough to avoid detection. The first human colonists arrived in ships that officially did not exist, using flight plans that were not filed with any galactic authority. Dr. Nathan Price's Phantom Drive technology allowed them to reach New Haven without leaving any trace of their passage, while advanced stealth systems kept their ships invisible to the automated monitoring networks that watched for unauthorized colonization. Within 6 months, New Haven hosted a population of 10,000 humans and the most advanced terraforming operation in galactic history. The colonists worked with technology that could transform atmosphere composition and soil chemistry in ways that traditional terraforming required decades to achieve. They were not just building a new world, they were creating the template for rapid expansion across dozens of other systems. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Roberts led special operations throughout the galaxy, with teams that moved like ghosts through alien territory. Her soldiers were equipped with personal stealth systems that made them nearly invisible, weapons that could disable targets without leaving evidence of human technology, and intelligence networks that gave them detailed information about every target before they moved. Amy's first major operation was the liberation of the Centauri Research Station, where human scientists had been imprisoned since the exile. The facility was heavily guarded and located deep within Zephyrian space, but Amy's team infiltrated it during a shift change and extracted all 37 human prisoners without triggering a single alarm. The Zephyrian guards discovered the all-empty cells 3 hours later, but security recordings showed only equipment malfunctions and minor system glitches. The rescued scientists brought with them research data that the Zephyrians had stolen from human facilities 15 years ago. More importantly, they brought detailed knowledge of Zephyrian military technology and defensive systems that proved invaluable to humanity's growing intelligence database. Within weeks of their rescue, human engineers were developing countermeasures for Zephyrian weapons and shields that had previously seemed impenetrable. Captain Chris Lee commanded the task force responsible for humanity's most ambitious operation yet. The Sigma Draconis system contained colonies belonging to 3 different alien species, all of whom were oppressed by Zephyrian occupation forces. The local population had been planning a rebellion for years, but they lacked the weapons and coordination necessary to succeed against superior technology and training. Chris's intervention was subtle and carefully planned. His ships never revealed themselves directly, instead providing weapons, intelligence, and tactical support that made the rebellion appear to be entirely a local affair. Human advisors worked with resistance leaders to plan operations that maximized effectiveness while minimizing casualties. Advanced communication systems allowed rebel groups on different planets to coordinate their attacks with precision that the Zephyrians could not understand or counter. The rebellion succeeded beyond all expectations, driving Zephyrian forces from the system and establishing an independent government that was secretly allied with humanity. The new government appeared to have developed its advanced technology through captured Zephyrian equipment and assistance from unknown allies, but no evidence pointed to human involvement. The Galactic Council condemned the rebellion, but could do nothing to reverse it without committing massive military resources to reconquer a system that was now defended by surprisingly sophisticated weapons and tactics. As reports of pirate attacks and colonial rebellions spread throughout the galaxy, patterns began to emerge that worried alien intelligence services. The unknown raiders always used different tactics and technologies, but they shared a level of sophistication and strategic thinking that suggested coordination by a single organizing intelligence. The rebellions always succeeded with minimal casualties and established governments that were surprisingly well prepared for independence and self-defense. The Crystalline Collective began increasing patrols in their outer territories after 3 mining operations disappeared without trace over a period of 6 months. The Zephyrian Empire implemented new security protocols for their colonial administration after a series of prison breaks freed thousands of political prisoners across dozens of systems. Neither species suspected that their greatest fear was already reality. Humanity had returned to the galaxy and was actively working to undermine their power. Kate Sullivan monitored alien communication networks from her command center deep beneath the surface of Luna, watching as her carefully planned operations created exactly the kind of chaos and uncertainty that would prepare the galaxy for what was coming next. The aliens were beginning to suspect that a new power was operating in their territory, but they still thought in terms of rival alien species or previously unknown civilizations. None of them imagined that the species they had exiled and forgotten was now operating freely throughout their territory with technology that surpassed their own. The Shadow War had begun, and humanity was winning every engagement without their enemies even knowing they were under attack. Each successful operation brought captured technology, rescued human prisoners, and valuable intelligence about alien capabilities and intentions. More importantly, each operation demonstrated that the galaxy's major powers were not as strong or as secure as they appeared. Within another year, humanity would be ready to move beyond covert operations and stealth attacks. The galaxy that had judged them unworthy of citizenship was about to discover that they had created their own replacements, and those replacements were not interested in asking permission to take what they wanted. The Crystalline Empire had made a fatal mistake, and they were about to learn the price of genocide. Their battle fleet surrounded the peaceful world of Centauri Prime, home to 12 million beings whose only crime had been refusing to surrender their independence to crystalline rule. The Centaurians were a gentle species that had never developed significant military technology, believing that their remote location and peaceful nature would protect them from the galaxy's larger conflicts. Admiral Tony Martinez commanded the calm, largest human fleet ever assembled, over 8,000 ships waiting in phantom drive just beyond the edge of the Centauri system. Tony had been preparing for this moment for 3 years, ever since intelligence reports confirmed that the crystallines were planning to eliminate the Centaurian Federation as an example to other species that might resist their expanding influence. The genocide would be swift and complete, leaving no survivors to tell other species what had happened. The human fleet had been positioned for 6 months, invisible to crystalline sensors but ready to act the moment their enemies revealed their intentions. Tony's ships represented 23 years of secret development, incorporating technology that no alien species had ever imagined. Each vessel carried weapons that could penetrate crystalline shields, drives that outperformed anything in their fleet, and defensive systems that made them nearly invulnerable to conventional attacks. Director Laura Adams watched the developing situation from her command center on New Terra, the secret capital of humanity's hidden empire. The facility had been built inside a massive asteroid that officially did not exist, located in a region of space that appeared empty to alien sensors. From this hidden base, Laura coordinated operations across 47 star systems where human colonies and military installations operated in complete secrecy. The decision to reveal humanity's return to the galaxy had not been made lightly. For over 2 decades, humans had worked in shadows and silence, building power while their enemies assumed they were contained and helpless. The strategy had been incredibly successful, allowing them to develop superior technology and establish a vast network of allies without facing organized resistance. But the planned genocide of the Centaurians crossed a line that humanity could not ignore. Captain Jack Robinson led the first wave of ships that emerged from Phantom Drive directly inside the crystalline formation. The alien fleet had been arranged for orbital bombardment, their ships positioned to rain destruction on the planet below while preventing any escape. They were not prepared for an attack from an enemy that could appear without warning in the middle of their formation using technology that should not have existed. The battle lasted less than 20 minutes. Crystalline ships that had seemed invincible just moments before found themselves outgunned, outmaneuvered, and completely overwhelmed by an enemy they had never expected to face. Human weapons cut through their shields like paper, while crystalline energy beams harmlessly dispersed against human defensive screens. Most importantly, the aliens discovered that their opponents fought with a level of tactical creativity and aggressive innovation that no crystalline commander could match. Jack's flagship, the Defiance, broadcasted a message to the surviving crystalline ships on all frequencies as their fleet tried desperately to retreat. This is Captain Jack Robinson of the Human Federation. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system before we destroy every one of your ships. The Centaurian. People are under our protection, and any attack on them will be considered an act of war against humanity. The response from the crystalline fleet commander was exactly what Jack had expected. The aliens were so shocked by the sudden appearance of human ships that they could barely form coherent sentences. 23 years of assuming that humanity was trapped and powerless had not prepared them for the reality of facing the most advanced military force in galactic history. Their retreat was chaotic and panicked, with several ships colliding in their haste to escape from weapons they could not understand or defend against. Vice Admiral Susan Clark commanded the second phase of humanity's revelation, a coordinated series of operations across 12 star systems that demonstrated the true scope of human capabilities. While Jack's fleet was protecting the Centaurians, Susan's ships emerged from Phantom Drive around crystalline military bases, Zephyrian command centers, and other strategic targets throughout the galaxy. The message Susan delivered to the Galactic Council was simple and direct. You thought you had caged Earth's children 23 years ago. Instead, you taught us to hunt in the dark. Now we are everywhere, and we remember everything you did to us and to the species you have oppressed. In our absence, the revelation spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. carried by communication networks that had assumed humanity was no longer a factor in galactic politics. The species that had been exiled and forgotten had returned with an empire that spanned half the known galaxy. More shocking than their survival was their obvious technological superiority and the scope of their hidden operations. Intelligence services throughout the galaxy began analyzing the implications of what they had discovered. The mysterious pirate attacks that had plagued shipping lanes for the past 5 years had been human military operations. The colonial rebellions that had weakened alien empires had been supported and coordinated by human agents. The advanced technology that had appeared in various resistance movements had been provided by a human intelligence network that reached into every major alien civilization. Admiral Helen Foster led the task force that surrounded the former human colony of Kepler 438b, now administered by Zephyrian occupation forces. Helen's ships appeared without warning in orbit around the world where 50,000 humans had been forced to abandon their homes 23 years ago. The Zephyrian administrators who had been exploiting the colony's resources suddenly found themselves facing weapons that made their defensive systems irrelevant. The liberation of Kepler 438b took less than 6 hours. Zephyrian forces surrendered without serious resistance when they realized that human technology had advanced far beyond anything they could counter. More importantly, the human colonists who had been forced to relocate discovered that their former homes had been maintained and improved by automated systems that had been working in secret for over 2 decades. Colonel Ryan Davis commanded the operation that revealed humanity's most closely guarded secret, the massive industrial complex that had been built throughout the outer Sol system. The alien monitoring stations that had watched humanity for 23 years discovered that they had been observing carefully constructed illusions, while the real work of building an interstellar empire happened in locations they never thought to examine. The galaxy watched in stunned amazement as human facilities decloaked throughout the Sol system, revealing manufacturing capabilities that dwarfed anything possessed by the major alien empires. The asteroid belt contained shipyards that could produce hundreds of vessels simultaneously. The outer planets hosted research facilities that had developed technology decades ahead of anything in the galactic database. Most shocking of all, Earth itself had been transformed into the nerve center of an intelligence and communication network that reached across the entire galaxy. Dr. Elena Martinez emerged from 23 years of secret research to address the galactic scientific community about humanity's technological achievements. Her presentation demonstrated innovations in faster-than-light travel, energy generation, defensive systems, and artificial intelligence that represented centuries of advancement compressed into 2 decades of intensive development. The alien scientists who attended Elena's presentation struggled to understand how a single species could have made such dramatic advances in isolation. The answer was both simple and profound. Humanity had been freed from the limitations and restrictions that had constrained their development during their time as members of galactic civilization. Without alien oversight or political constraints, human creativity and innovation had flourished in ways that no other species had ever experienced. As news of humanity's return spread throughout the galaxy, the reaction was everything from amazement to terror. Species that had supported humanity's exile began reconsidering their positions, while others that had been oppressed by the major alien empires saw hope for the first time in decades. The galaxy that had dismissed humanity as too aggressive and unpredictable was about to discover that they had been correct in their assessment, but wrong about what that would mean for the future of interstellar civilization. The hidden empire had become visible, and nothing would ever be the same again. 2 years had passed since humanity revealed their hidden empire to the galaxy, and the transformation was complete. The Galactic Council chambers that had once echoed with the pronouncement of humanity's exile now stood empty and abandoned. Their former occupants either fled to distant systems or serving in new roles under human oversight. The age of alien domination had ended not with conquest, but with the simple recognition that a better way of organizing galactic civilization had emerged. President Karen Davis stood before the First Galactic Assembly in the Great Hall of New Terra, addressing representatives from over 300 species that had gathered to participate in humanity's vision of interstellar governance. The hall itself was a marvel of human engineering, built inside a massive space station that orbited the former asteroid, where humanity's secret government had operated for 2 decades. Now it served as the open capital of the human Galactic Federation, welcoming beings from every corner of known space. Karen had been chosen as humanity's first galactic president, not because of her military achievements or technological expertise, but because of her ability to build bridges between former enemies. Her speech to the assembly was broadcast across the galaxy, reaching species that had never before been invited to participate in their own governance. "Never again will one species dominate another," Karen declared. Her words translated into hundreds of languages and communication methods. "Never again will might alone determine right. We learned during our exile that true strength comes not from suppression, but from unity built on mutual respect and shared prosperity." Admiral Ryan Parker oversaw the integration of former enemy fleets into humanity's forces from his command center, orbiting Jupiter. The process had been surprisingly smooth, as many alien officers who had once enforced humanity's exile discovered that they preferred serving in a military that valued innovation and individual initiative over rigid hierarchy and unquestioning obedience. Commander Zektar, the same Zephyrian who had pronounced humanity's exile 25 years ago, now served as Ryan's deputy for alien integration. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. Freed from the political pressures and corruption that had characterized the old Galactic Council, Zektar had proven to be an capable officer who genuinely cared about protecting peaceful species from aggression and exploitation. The former enemies, who joined human forces, brought with them knowledge and perspectives that made the combined fleet stronger than any purely human organization could have been. Crystalline officers contributed their natural ability to coordinate complex operations across vast distances. Zephyrian commanders shared their expertise in defensive strategy and resource management. Dozens of other species added their own unique capabilities to create a military force that was not just powerful, but truly representative of galactic diversity. Dr. Michelle Turner led the Great Revelation Project from her laboratory on Mars, where teams of human and alien scientists worked together to share technological advances that had been developed in isolation for decades. Michelle had been part of the original team that reverse-engineered alien technology during the early years of exile, but now she focused on combining human innovation with alien knowledge to create solutions that neither could have achieved alone. The most dramatic breakthroughs came from combining human creativity with alien systematic thinking. Crystalline scientists who had spent centuries developing perfect but static solutions discovered that introducing controlled randomness could exponentially improve performance. Zephyrian engineers learned that human approaches to problem-solving could achieve the same results as their traditional methods using half the resources and time. Technology that had once been jealously guarded by individual species was now shared freely throughout the Federation. Medical advances that had taken decades to develop were distributed to every world that needed them. Transportation and communication systems that had been available only to the wealthy and powerful were extended to remote colonies and developing civilizations. Captain Danny Lewis commanded the first joint species expedition beyond the galaxy's edge, leading a fleet of ships crewed by beings who had been enemies just years before. The mission was pure exploration, designed to discover what lay beyond the boundaries of known space and whether other galaxies contained civilizations that might eventually make contact with their own. Danny's flagship, the Unity, carried representatives from 47 different species, all working together with a level of cooperation that would have been impossible under the old galactic order. Human officers served alongside crystalline navigators and Zephyrian engineers, while scientists from dozens of other species contributed their expertise to the mission of expanding knowledge for the benefit of all. The expedition's first major discovery was a network of ancient structures left behind by a civilization that had vanished millions of years ago. The ruins contained technology that none of the current galactic species could fully understand, but the combined knowledge of the expedition's diverse crew allowed them to decipher enough to realize they had found evidence of a galactic federation that had existed long before any of their species had developed spaceflight. Agent Mary Thompson, the former shopkeeper who had spent years gathering intelligence in alien territory, now served as the Federation's ambassador to the Outer Rim territories. Her work involved building relationships with species that had been isolated or ignored by the previous galactic order, bringing them into the growing network of cooperation and mutual support that characterized humanity's approach to interstellar relations. Mary's success came from her understanding that every species had something valuable to contribute, regardless of their level of technological development or military power. She had helped establish trade relationships that brought prosperity to worlds that had been economically marginalized for centuries. She had negotiated peace agreements between species that had been fighting over resources for generations. Most importantly, she had demonstrated that the human approach to diplomacy was based on finding mutual benefit rather than domination. Bob Johnson, who had spent years maintaining atmospheric systems on the crystalline homeworld, while secretly gathering intelligence, now led the Federation's environmental restoration projects. His teams worked throughout the galaxy to repair damage caused by centuries of exploitative resource extraction and industrial pollution. The work was massive in scope, but made possible by technology that could restore entire ecosystems in decades rather than centuries. The restoration projects became symbols of the new galactic order, demonstrating that the Federation was committed to healing the damage caused by previous generations, rather than simply profiting from existing resources. Worlds that had been strip-mined and abandoned were transformed into thriving colonies. Polluted systems were cleaned and returned to their natural beauty. Species that had been driven to near extinction by habitat destruction found their homeworlds, restored and protected. Jake Morrison, humanity's former ambassador who had witnessed their exile from the Galactic Council chambers, now served as the Federation's Minister of Justice. His work involved establishing legal frameworks that protected the rights of all species, while ensuring that the mistakes of the previous galactic order would not be repeated. The new legal system was based on principles of equality and proportional representation rather than the power-based hierarchy that had characterized alien governance. Jake's greatest achievement was the Universal Rights Charter, a document that guaranteed basic freedoms and protections to every sentient being in the galaxy regardless of their species, homeworld, or level of technological development. The charter was not imposed by force but adopted voluntarily by species that recognized the benefits of participating in a system based on justice rather than power. Dr. Alan Brooks, who had studied the alien containment barrier during humanity's exile, now directed the Federation's advanced research programs. His work focused on developing technology that could benefit all species rather than providing military advantages to any single group. The research stations he established throughout the galaxy became centers of learning and innovation, where beings from different worlds could work together on projects that would have been impossible under the old system of species rivalry and technological hoarding. As the ceremony marking the 5th anniversary of the Federation's establishment concluded on New Terra, participants from across the galaxy prepared to return to their homeworlds, carrying news of continued progress and expanding cooperation. The transformation of galactic civilization was not complete, but the foundation had been established for a future based on principles that the galaxy had never before experienced. The species that had been exiled and forgotten had indeed built something magnificent in the darkness, but it was not the empire of conquest that their enemies had feared. Instead, they had created a civilization founded on the revolutionary idea that diversity was strength, that cooperation was more powerful than domination, and that the greatest achievements came from working together rather than ruling over others.